Hey guys, so today I am going to be going over Black Killer Masamune. And the reason I'm going over her is because I've mentioned her several times, and in passing I've probably said something along the lines of she's the best collab unit, she's arguably one of the best units in Tagatame, and these things are true. And I'm going to be going over how absolutely ludicrous her kit is. Now, in the title, I may have mentioned something along the lines of her being the Roxy of Japan, and this is true to an extent, although I would say that Roxy is probably more meta-defining than Black Killer Masamune was. More so to say, when Roxy was released in Global, she was the option, while even without Black Killer Masamune, there are still plenty of other options that do what she does, just not quite as well. There's clearly only one Roxy in Global, and only Roxy can do what Roxy can do. Quite obviously. So let's get into it. So this is Black Killer Masamune, and I don't know exactly what the naming convention will be because it doesn't seem like the naming convention in Global will be very specific. So I will keep calling her Black Killer because that's what we refer to her in Japan as. But she will be Dark something Masamune at the very least. So let's just hop into her Kaigan right away. So for her Kaigan, I have her at 555, and you do not have to have her at 555. I just chose to because I run her in almost every single fire team I run, just period. And obviously Gate 1, as always, is for stats. Gate 2 will be upgrading her overdrive, and it will give her an additional 10% HP and 8% agility. Now, this isn't necessarily great as far as Gate 2s go. It's not a super stat-heavy gate, and she doesn't actually need it, but it will allow her to get running just a little bit faster and be a little bit more consistent. And the one theme you are going to hear me say a lot today is consistency. Black Killer Masamune is insanely consistent. Now, as for her leader skill, it was originally 50% HP and 20% slash with, I'm not sure if it had the plus 30 to hybrids or not, I'd have to double check. But when you upgrade to the Gate 3, it'll turn it into a 50% HP and 20 fire all damage, which will allow you to run mages on the same team when she leads. And this is actually more important in the fire probably than almost any other element other than water, and that is because fire has a lot of really good mages. We have Noah, we have Emma, we have Loopy, plenty of good fire mages to go around, and I will run her in those teams. So now the plus 30 damage to hybrids is not useful at all. It's basically exclusively for POT content, specifically raiding. And raiding is something that she does insanely well. So let's go ahead and get into her gear setup. So Black Killer Masamune is one of those units that can be spec'd and run in several different ways, and I could make this video an hour going over the intricacies of how her kit works and the different ways it interacts with certain skills and reactives, etc, etc, etc. But I'm just going to try to boil it down to the main ways to use her in a pretty cut and dry fashion. So she does have a Nenso as well as a VCR. But as far as the VCR goes and the Nenso goes, I don't have it. And it's not like it's super necessary to have it for her to operate effectively. Now, it is nice to have because if you get her Nenso, it will give her additional slash attack power, which will go to the entire POTK group, but she specifically wants it, as well as a nice HP buff. And the rest of the Nenso actually moves towards regular Masamune, and I will not be going over the Kaigan's regular Masamune, because A, I never Kaiganed her, B, I don't really want to farm her, and C, POTK is out right now, so I can't farm her even if I wanted to. But if you do not have that Nenso, I highly suggest going for the Jin Nenso. And it's for the same reason other units might want to use the Jin Nenso. It's because of that beautiful vision ability that's going to give her AoE that her kit just doesn't really have. And that is the one downfall of Black Killer Masamune. Her AoE is extremely limited, but as you will see in a little bit, it doesn't really matter. As for armor, so regen armor is obviously the standard. I don't know why you'd want to change off of that. Now, she does have access to this POTK Ray Gear, which will give her, I believe it's a 50% damage reduction shield on that piece of gear, but it also has minus 30 hit rate. Or, I'm sorry, minus 30 dodge rate. And you might be thinking, well, why would you want minus 30 dodge rate? Well, since you guys have Parashu now, you probably understand how the Berserker reactive works. And Masamune has the Berserker job. And she actually does run it on occasion, and I'll go over that in a little bit. But otherwise, this is 300 HP and 100 defense and magic defense. It is an option. It's not necessarily the best option. Because if this was an accessory, this would be way better than it is. But because it's an armor and you have to give up the regen to get it, I don't personally suggest getting it. If you're on a non-regen map, the Tama VCR is a good option, or the Rainbow Armor is a good option. But if you can heal on the map, there's no reason not to run regen, and there really aren't many other options as far as armors go. Now, accessories. This is where things get a little more interesting. So, before I actually go into accessories, let me do her weapon real quick, because I forgot about this. So, she's going to probably want to run her farmable weapon, which will give her 10 initial jewels, 35 physical attack, and 10% or 10 flat crit rate, which is it's actually a really good weapon in general. I forget. I think it's classified as a great sword. Yes, it's classified as a great sword. So, because it has the candy cane scythe. Anyways, so this is a really good thing to run on her, and her weapon ability is very potent. But there are occasions where you might want to run the clock stop scythe, and I will go into that in a little bit as to why this is so good on her. But that is another option, as well as any other good great sword. But in general, the clock stop scythe and her own weapon are what you're going to run. Now for accessories, this is going to be a doozy. So if you're running her own weapon and regen armor, you do not have any speed in any of your gear. So you might not want to run this piece of gear, but if you do want to run it, you can sacrifice a little bit of speed and gain access to 50 dex, 50 fire all damage, and 5 hit rate, as well as 20 wind exploit. Her entire kit is made up of fire attacks, so the wind exploit will work for all of her major skills. And this in general is going to be the highest damage output. Now this ring comes from Neovita 4110. And they have not run Neovita in a very long time, so I have not been able to make any videos on that content. But Neovita is incredibly difficult. I don't know if I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Neovita, you are looking at a full mono element team of every element that's Kaigan level. Like just straight up Kaigans or near Kaigans, or a non-Kaigan unit with Kaigan level stats such as Merlinus. You need an insane team to go through there. And I did not go through Neovita the first 2 times it ran, and it was several months after it was initially dropped that I actually managed to get up to floor 115, which is the current max level. This is an insanely hard thing to do, so if you can't get your hands on this, that's okay. The one thing I will say is giving up that speed on Black Killer Masamune is an okay thing to do. There are reasons for this that I'll be going over when I go through her actual kit. So, other than that, we have access to... obviously, the Fujika VCR is always an option if you need that resist. Saint Meteor. This is going to give you the speed that you need, as well as extra gem gain, or jewel gain. But you're really not going to need that. Teddy will take the edge off of attacks with more jewel gain, but once again, you're really not going to need that. Anything with 10 speed is a good option, to be honest with you. But what I like to run is, I like to run the Attack on Titan Levi accessory, the Teacup. And the reason I like to run this is because it's going to give her 5 slash damage, 7 speed, as well as 7 giant damage modifier, and this is going to make her even better at raiding than she already is. These are all good options to run on her. There can be other occasions where you might want to run something, and I will show you why. There is a small gimmick you can use with her and her reactive. So, let's get into her kit and her setup here. So, the way I like to run my Black Killer Masamune is I like to run her with her main and sub, as well as her own reactive, her upgraded Kaigan reactive, or upgrade Kaigan passive, which is Overdrive, as well as her own Snowball. Now, I'll be going into the actual kit itself when I go into the map, but I want to explain how the Snowball works. So, the Snowball stacks 10 times, and it stacks when she does damage. So no matter what, if she hits something, she gets a stack. And at max stacks, it is 70% physical attack, 70% physical defense, 30% agility, and plus 70 healing. So, basically what this means is that every single time she hits something, she's going to gain 7 attack, 7 physical defense, 3 agility, and 7 healing. So that's the reason why giving up that agility piece of gear is an okay thing to do. 30% agility is huge. She's already running, without the teacup, she'd be running at about a 155, 154 base. So 30% on top of that, we're looking at probably well over 200 speed, although I'd actually have to go and calc it to be sure. And I don't have the calc in front of me, which is unfortunate, but basically, if you hit something, you get a stack. And this is one of the reasons why she's so consistent. It's because she can gain so many stats. So, think about that. Overdrive is 50% physical attack. Her Snowball gives her 70% physical attack. She's looking at 120% physical attack from her passives alone, and she has about 1,000 physical attack. So, I spent enough time talking here. I went into the wrong menu. But it is time to hop into the map. I need to finish up the April Fool's Dios thing, so that way I can show you Dios with his new 8k HP. It's actually pretty nutty, although I still don't think he does any damage, but I haven't run any calcs on it. Alright, let's... no, I don't want to use that. Yes, I don't need this team. I don't even remember what that team was for. Alright, and we'll pull up her. Just quick make sure everything is in place and turn that off, and let's turn skill effects back on, because I know some of you really like those skill effects. I personally don't care for them, but Black Killer Masamune does have a rather awesome animation for her weapon ability that you guys might like to see. So let's go ahead and attack. So that's a water enemy, so it's not going to really give you a good idea. But that was 1.4k right off the bat on a water enemy. So, I kind of want to show off her... regen here. And they missed. And that one hit. So, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Berserker Reactive now, but every single time she gets hit, she gets 20 joules. So, if you get hit like 3 or 4 times, you're going to have like 60, 80 joules on hand, and her highest joule cost attack is 45 joules. So, you do the math. If she gets hit twice, she can pretty much use any skill in her kit. That's just nutty. It really is absolutely insane. So, let's start with the first attack. So, this is a gap closer, and it does defense down. And that'll drop defense by 50%, which is also very helpful in raids, as I'm sure you can imagine. Her next attack, I'm going to go into her sub. Now, this attack is not going to be as powerful, and I'm trying to look it up. There it is. But it does have extra wind modifier on it, so it has 40 wind exploit on it, so it will do more damage to wind enemies, but I'm just going to go ahead and use it here so you can see it. And that's going to be a really nice attack because it has a lot of uses on it. And remember, each time I hit something, I get another stack on my passive. Right? So, let's go ahead and... I don't really want to show off that next attack on there like that. So, we'll go over here. Now, you'll see that this is a small cross AoE. And it does slow. So, once again, another great raiding skill. Because remember, when you slow raid bosses, they can't move as much. If they can't move as much, less turns pass, and thus you get more damage in on the boss. Now, recently in Japan, because they absolutely are incapable of creating a properly made character, Bon kind of changed the way they have to do raid counting, because they screwed up and basically made it so Bon could reduce the raid boss's speed to 0, so they would never get a turn. And I'm sure you can immediately see what the issue with this is. So, we're going to do our 2.5 times slash charge up. And I'm just going to point this out now, because I'm not sure how many of you have noticed, but my Masamune is getting more healing from the regen armor as we go. And I'm pretty sure that's because the healing works with the regen armor from her snowball. So the farther you get into the match, the more she's going to heal. So let's go ahead and show off that weapon ability. Awesome, right? Now I'm going to have to go back into the map in order to show off the rest of her kit, so just hang tight while I go through these load screens. I don't really care about the AP right now. So, not only is she going to be doing more damage as the map goes on, she's going to get a little bit tankier with the physical defense as the map goes on. She's going to get faster as the map goes on. She's also going to heal more back as the map goes on. So, like, how is this character balanced? The answer is she really isn't. She has a relatively high crit rate because she has that extra passive crit rate from her weapon. And there's one more trick she has up her sleeve, and this is probably the crowning jewel of the kit. And it's this AoE here. So, this AoE is a little weird. Alright, so, as you'll notice, if you have it like, so, you see 8.4k here, and you see 10k here, right? But let's go and use it on both of them. So, on that wind unit, it did 1.6k each, which is, what is that, 480? So, it did 4.8k on that wind unit. Now, you might be asking, Mao, what's going on? It just said it was going to do about 10,000 damage. Well, the way that AoE works is the more targets that get hit inside the AoE, the less damage it will do to each target. And you'll be thinking to yourself, well, what's good about this? Well, what's good about this is she heals the damage back. So, it becomes incredibly difficult to kill her, because even if you manage to get her low, as long as she's taken enough hits that she can use that AoE, she can basically just heal it all right back. So not only does she snowball, she's very consistent about getting her snowball out. And that is one of the main reasons why Black Killer Masamune is such a great unit. Now, one thing I want to point out is Black Killer Masamune is not going to be doing the most damage in the game. She just isn't. She can put out insane numbers, don't get me wrong, but she's never going to be the highest damage unit in the game. But what she is she consistently does the highest damage every turn. Like, if you were to take Meliodas versus Black Killer Masamune, Meliodas can probably output a larger charge up AoE, but over the course of the entire fight, there are going to be turns when Meliodas has to get himself some jewels, so that way he can use his attacks. Meanwhile, Black Killer Masamune, she literally, if she gets hit twice, can use just about any skill in her kit. And this means that, she just quite frankly can, just keep using her kit the entire time, and she never has to stop. So that kind of level of consistency, along with the insane amount of tempo she gets from the combination of the Zerker job with her unique, and this is the only instance where we've ever really seen the Zerker job matched up super well with another job, such that the other job becomes just absolutely insane. Because if it was just without the Berserker, Black Killer Masamune would merely be great. But with the Berserker reactive, she becomes insane. Now, I'm going to try to proc it here, and we'll see if it works. I don't know if it'll show it off super well, but there is a trick you can use here. So, as you can see, I attached the clock stop scythe, and that is because she can reflect damage and stop from the however far away she can counter. How long is her counter for? Let me look it up here. 4 spaces. So if anything attacks her within 4 spaces, she can immediately counter. And if you're running the clock stop scythe, you can have the possibility of stopping them. And this works for any status ailment that she's capable of inflicting through her gear, which is why I mentioned that last accessory slot. There is a gimmick where you can put a bunch of status on her gear and reflect it and try to inflict it on people. Now, this is obviously very memey, but the actual reflect for Black Killer Masamune is not so much of a meme and more like on some maps, it's the way to go. So, you might be thinking, Mal, why on earth would you substitute the Berserker 20 joule on getting hit for a reactive that barely does any damage back? Because let's face it, if the enemy hits you for low damage, Black Killer Masamune isn't going to do much damage back. Well, remember the way her snowball works. Every time she does damage to an enemy, she gets another stack on her passive. So if on turn 1 she's hit by 10 enemies, and she reflects all of that damage, she's going to be at max stats on her snowball on turn 1. So she doesn't have to stack it herself. And that is why, unlike on all the other Black Killer units, Black Killer Masamune is the one who can really pull off this reactive just simply better than anyone else can. It's absolutely nuts, the kind of consistency and just the way the variety of ways you can run this unit. Now, there is one more way you can run this unit, and that is as a Berserker. And once again, you'd be like, Mal, why would we run Berserker when her unique is so darn powerful? Well, the answer is raiding. And the way the new raids work, you have to inflict as much damage in a total number of turns. So, the way raiding worked before is each time the boss took a turn, the clock would count down another tick, and you'd have like 5 or 6 boss moves before you would game over, and you'd be kicked out, and you'd have to try again to whittle the HP down more. The way it works now is it gives you 50 turns among all the units on the screen, so it makes sense to clear out as much trash as you can as fast as possible, and then deal as much damage to the boss as humanly possible within a short amount of time. Well, if you have a bunch of units, and let's say one of them is a support unit, well, they might be able to slow the boss, but they're still going to be eating your turns. So, for those of you who don't know, Berserker skills have a modifier on them for dead allies. So, every single time one of your allies dies, they gain it's either 20 or 30% damage on top of the damage they were already going to do. And literally, the way this works is Black Killer Masamune goes in, they clear out the trash, she kills all of her allies, and then proceeds to wail on the boss. And I haven't run this setup myself, but I think I heard 20 or 30k hits or something stupid. But basically, Black Killer Masamune is so good at raiding, literally, unless the boss is water, fire teams are the best option. Just hands down. So, while Roxy may have to an extent broken PvE or PvP, Black Killer Masamune breaks rating. I will say this right now, as far as rating is concerned, Black Killer Masamune is broken. And my definition of broken is always going to be if you play the game in a way it wasn't originally intended to be played. You were never supposed to run Black Killer Masamune into a Thunder Boss. You were supposed to run a Wind team. But she does so much damage, along with the rest of the Fire team, that Fire is always going to be the dominant rating option. So, anyone in Global who wants to do well in raids, you need this unit. I don't normally say things like you need units or you don't need units. You need this one if you want to raid. If you want to raid and you want to be the best raider, you have to have Black Killer Masamune. It's non-negotiable. She is the best raiding unit in the game, bar none. And quite literally, unless your Thunder team is insane, she's best to run into water bosses too. So unless you have a fully Kaigan Thunder team, Black Killer Masamune is going to get the job done. So, as I'm sure you guys know, I don't normally talk up units quite like this. Like, where I say, like, this is a must-have, you need to have this unit, look how great this unit is, but Black Killer Masamune is definitely a unit that's worth saving for. She's a unit that is worth going broke, well, maybe not going broke, but if you have a lot of gems saved up, this is the time to use them. Now, disclaimer, Global does not have an exclusive Fire unit yet. I have no idea if we're getting Fire Roxy or Fire Sieg, right? We don't know where the Global exclusive units are going to land. Now, the last two, Roxy and Minerva, have been, well, Roxy was just plain broken, and Minerva, if she wasn't broken, she was insanely strong. And I know a lot of Global people were complaining because they didn't really see the value in her because she is part support. Believe me, Minerva is almost broken. She is insanely good. If you just one look at her kit can tell you that. You know, she might not be a Magia controller or a Magic Meister on the same level that Nina is, but her unique kit with those buffs and those shields, it's very versatile. And if she does get her Kaigan, she will see a lot of use in content like Neovita and will probably significantly make it easier. Because, holy crap, Neovita. I know that it's been kind of rambly, and that's mostly because this was going to be an insanely long video, no matter how you looked at it. And there was a lot of stuff to go over in general. So thanks for sticking through it with all this time. I will say one thing. Black Killer Masamune does have one glaring weakness, and it might not sound like a weakness, but until you've actually like played her and you understand why it's a weakness, it's hard to comprehend. And basically, it's that if she is incapable of surviving, she is not the best unit for the job. And this might sound like a blatantly, well, no duh, Mal. If the unit can't survive, clearly it wasn't the best option, but you have to remember that the Black Killer Masamune is not a unit that plays safe. There are quite literally instances where I just place my Black Killer Masamune in just a bunch of enemies and they knock her down to like 500 HP and then I heal it all back. That is normal Black Killer Masamune play. She plays very aggressively, and if you're not playing her aggressively, you're using her wrong. She is insanely aggressive, but she is one of the few units in the game that can play as aggressively as that and not get punished heavily for it. And that's because she builds up speed, and the more speed she gets, the more heals she gets from the regen armor, and the more stacks she has, the more she gets from the regen armor. And it's just all snowballs out of control, and it is quite literally... Her kit is a joy to play. I'm just going to say it. I love my Black Killer Masamune. She is probably my favorite unit in the game to use because she feels super fast. Like Roxy, she pretty much never runs out of jewels, so you have that insane tempo that Roxy has, which is one of the other reasons why she's broken. But I will say that if there was a broken unit in Japan, kit-wise, this is it. Other units like Meliodas and Sharon and most of the other ones, they do have a glaring downside where a lot of those charge up units, they need to gather gems so that way they can really output their damage. Black Killer Masamune, gems are just handed, or not gems, jewels are just handed to her, and she just goes ham. Anyways, guys, thanks as always for watching. I will be doing another video on Hisham next, because I know people asked for that, and I feel like I have mentioned him a couple of times now. But it's probably good to go over and review so that way you guys understand just how good he is, because he is insanely good. He's probably the best support in the game. Anyways, guys, thanks as always for watching, and I hope to see you next time.